Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Margaret, and here I share real-life stories from my friends at the nursing home. She whispered to someone on the phone, "She still thinks he's working overseas. He's not. He's married again." I was standing in the hallway, arms full of freshly folded towels, balancing the weight against my hip. The words came through the door like cold wind, sharp and quiet, but unmistakable. My knees didn't buckle. They locked. I stood still, as if any movement might collapse the little lie that held our household together. The she in that sentence was me. I've lived with my son and his wife for 5 years now. Since after my husband passed and Arif left for Dubai for work, Misha said they'd need help with the children. It made sense. I had nothing left back in Lahore. The house was sold, my circle of friends scattered or gone. So I came here, to Karachi, with my 2 suitcases and my good intentions. I became their furniture, helpful, dependable, present, but ignored. I looked after their children. I made their home run. Misha would say, "Ami, you're the heart of this house." And I believed her, even when her eyes didn't quite meet mine when she said it. I cooked the meals, kept the children in clean uniforms, and made sure the house didn't fall apart in my son's absence. Arif called every few weeks, always too busy for video. Always a quick hello to the children, a rushed, "How are you, Ami?" Then silence again. But I never questioned it. I wanted to believe in him, until last night. I pressed my ear to the door, my heart a dull, insistent drum. "She doesn't suspect a thing," Misha continued. "He still sends money, that's what matters. Yes, every month. She cooks, cleans, watches the kids. I'm not crazy enough to give that up. Let him play house over there. I've got my own setup here." There was a pause, then laughter. Not nervous laughter, the relaxed kind, confident, cruel. I walked back to my room in a daze, folded towels abandoned on a hallway chair. My room, a converted storage room, barely enough space for a single bed and a narrow wardrobe. I sat on the edge of the mattress and stared at the wall. How many lies had I carried? Like groceries I didn't realize were rotting in my hands. I am 62 years old. I have iron in my back and softness in my hands. My husband, Mazhar, was a textile supervisor who died with little to his name and even less affection from the children he worked himself to death for. Arif was our youngest, always distant, always clever. When he first told me he was going abroad, I cried, not out of sadness, but because it sounded like a future. Misha supported the idea. "It's just 2 years, Ami. He'll come back and we'll finally have a real house." 5 years passed. I lived in their house, but never truly in their lives. The children called me Dadi, but never clung to me. Misha made sure to remind them who the real parent was. "Don't listen to Dadi too much, okay? She's old-fashioned." I was the woman who woke before everyone and slept last. The one who wrapped parathas in foil for school lunches and replaced cracked plates without a word. Now I understood why Misha never seemed lonely, why she always looked polished, even when the rest of us looked wrung out. Why she took long calls behind closed doors and smirked afterward, as if she were holding a secret joke. I had been the fool in someone else's performance. The next morning, I watched her pour tea with those manicured hands and smiled. My mouth moved the way it always had. My hands served breakfast. But something inside me had gone utterly still. "Ami, I'll be going to my sister's this weekend. Can you keep the kids?" she asked. "Of course," I replied. That's what I was there for. Free childcare, stable optics. A house with a grandmother looked respectable, didn't it? Later that night, after everyone slept, I took her iPad from the living room and slipped back into my little room. I wasn't born knowing how to do these things, but I had eyes and a brain that still worked. I remembered her passcode from when she asked me to help the children with online school. In 5 minutes, I had everything open. Arif's name was barely in her messages, but there were other names. One thread stood out, a friend named Hina. I read every message between them, heart clenched, fingers trembling. Hina, how's the princess in Dubai? Misha, still busy with his other wife? He thinks I don't know, but guess who's been saving receipts and tracking his flights? Hina, genius, play dumb and cash the checks. Misha, exactly. Let her rot in that storage room. She's too proud to ask questions anyway. Rot. That word lodged itself in my chest. I had always thought the humiliation would come from my son. I never imagined it would be her, this woman I shared tea with, who once asked me to bless her unborn child. Over the next week, I smiled and nodded. I took screenshots of messages. I checked Arif's flight history through his airline account. She had saved the password in her notes. I discovered wire transfers to a second Pakistani account I'd never heard of. I traced photo folders on her cloud storage, a baby boy that wasn't ours, a woman with gold bangles and a Dubai skyline behind her. She had known for years. They were building two kingdoms on my back, but I would be the storm that collapsed both palaces. The days that followed were eerie in their normalcy. The same quiet clinking of dishes in the morning, the same quick hugs from the children. Misha humming tunelessly as she applied her lipstick, swiping her phone like a queen scrolling through subjects. But now, I was watching. Not surviving, watching. I saw the way she paused when certain messages came in, the way she left the table to answer calls, the way she never once mentioned Arif anymore unless prompted. And even then, it was just vague shrugs. He's fine, busy. You know how it is over there. I played along, like the dutiful mother-in-law. But inside, something shifted. I didn't feel like prey anymore. I felt like a witness, like a woman stepping back from a painting she'd been standing too close to for years. All the lines of this family were crooked, and I had missed it. One afternoon, while the children were napping and Misha was out getting her nails done, I stood in front of the hallway mirror. I barely recognized the woman looking back. The grey hair was mine, the soft folds under the chin, the cardigan sleeves rolled neatly up my forearms. But the eyes, those were new, steady, unforgiving, tired of being kind just to survive. I remembered a time years ago when Arif was 10 and stole money from Mazhar's wallet. I had lied for him, told his father it must have fallen somewhere, begged him not to raise his hand. Arif had stood behind me the whole time, silent. He never said thank you. Not then, not after. And now I had raised a man who could forget his mother like this, discard her into the background of his life like an unwanted frame. I sat down that night with a notepad and wrote a single line at the top. What do I owe this family now? Beneath it, I wrote, I gave them my time, my labor, my silence, my back, my name, my trust, my grandsons. Then I wrote in large, clear letters, I owe them nothing else. It was around this time that I started walking again, slowly at first. Just down the street, where the fruit vendors sat with their flies and plastic bags, where children played cricket with chipped bats and curses. I wore my chador, sunglasses, and a bag over my shoulder with the iPad tucked inside. I found a small internet cafe on a back road near the mosque. The boy running it looked about 20. I handed him 200 rupees and said, Can you help an old woman make a backup of something important? He smiled. Of course, Auntie. In 10 minutes, we had all the screenshots saved onto a USB drive, which I slipped into the lining of my purse. I thanked him and walked out, heart pounding. It was the first time in years I had done something entirely for myself. The house began to feel like a stage I was preparing to leave. Misha made no changes. She was too sure of herself. On Sunday, she hosted her usual tea for the neighborhood ladies. I served the snacks, poured the chai, stood quietly in the corner. The women complimented her decor, her strength, how lucky she was to have such a helpful mother-in-law. She smiled at me with that same rehearsed warmth and said, "Ami's the real backbone of this house." I smiled back. But I noticed her fingers twitch near her phone. She always kept it close, face down, as if her secrets might spill out if left unattended. That night, after she went to bed, I opened her phone one last time. It was unlocked. Arif had sent her a photo. Him and another woman, their child between them, at a restaurant with a name I recognized from one of the receipts I'd saved. His arm was around the new wife's shoulder. His face looked younger than I remembered, happier. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then I sent it to myself. I also sent it to the number labeled Hina. No message, just the photo. Let them wonder. Let them feel the corners tightening. I went back to my room and pulled out the old tin box I kept my passport and jewelry in. Inside it, I placed the USB. I also added a printed letter, neatly folded. 2 weeks later, I called a friend from Lahore, Razia, a widow like me who had moved to Multan. We hadn't spoken in years. When I told her everything, she went silent. Then she said, "You didn't deserve this, not from them. Come to me. Stay as long as you need." That was all I needed to hear. The next morning, I served breakfast like usual. Misha was complaining about the children's school fee hike. "Arif will cover it," she said, sipping her tea. "I'll talk to him today." I looked at her and said, "No need. I'll be gone by this evening." She blinked. "What?" "I'm leaving," I said calmly. "Razia Appa in Multan has offered me a place. I've already booked the train." Her fork clattered onto the plate. "Ami, what are you saying? Who'll help with the children?" "You'll manage," I said, rising. "You always do." "But Arif can manage his second family," I said, placing my napkin down. "It's only fair." Her mouth opened, closed. I walked away without waiting for her reply. By noon, my bag was packed. One small suitcase, one handbag, and a plastic folder with my medical records and that USB tucked in the side. I took the silver bangles Mazhar had given me when we were first married. Not because they were worth much, they weren't, but because I remembered the version of myself who once believed in permanence. Misha watched me move around the house like a ghost in daylight. Her face was pale, eyes darting. I could see the calculations behind her eyes. How much she'd lose. How much she could spin this. She tried once, near the door. "Ami, if something's wrong, we can talk." I turned to her slowly. "I heard everything," I said. "That night in your room, about Arif, about the other woman, about me." She froze. I stepped closer. "You knew. You lied. Not just to me. To the children. To everyone." "It's not what you think." "It never is," I interrupted. "You didn't stay because of love. You stayed because having an old woman in the house made you look respectable. Because you knew Arif would keep sending money if he believed you were raising his children like a devoted wife." Misha's lip quivered, but no apology came. I reached into my bag and took out a sealed envelope. "This is a letter for the family," I said, It'll go out tomorrow, through every WhatsApp group, every inbox. It tells the truth. About Arif. About you. About me. Her eyes widened. Ami? Please? No, I said softly. You don't get to use silence anymore. I left before the children came home. It felt kinder that way. They were innocent. They still thought their father loved from afar. They didn't need to see the seams unravel just yet. The rickshaw ride to the station was hot and slow. Karachi's August heat clung to the skin like punishment. But inside, I felt lighter than I had in years. When the train finally pulled away from the platform, I leaned back against the cracked vinyl seat and let my eyes close. No one called after me. No one tried to stop me. That night in the guest room at Razia Appa's, I opened my phone and sent 2 emails, one to Arif's new wife. I found her address through a shared credit card statement Misha had saved. I thought you should know that your husband is also married to another woman in Pakistan. He has children here. I helped raise them. His first wife knows about you. She's been using his lie to build her own kingdom. I am no longer a part of either. The second email was a blind copy to nearly 40 family contacts, old friends, former neighbours. The subject line read, "A statement from the mother of Zahida Mazhar." The body of the email was my letter. It started, "My son is to me, now dead, not by fate, but by choice." I wrote about the lie, the years of silence, the labour I gave without question. I wrote about the coldness of entitlement, the way both Misha and Arif built parallel lives and assumed I'd hold both on my back like a mule. I ended it with this: I am no longer the shadow in anyone's house. I have buried what needed burying. I am beginning my own life now, at 62, and I do not mourn those I've left behind. Then I pressed send. The fallout began in hours. My phone buzzed endlessly. Cousins gasping in messages, Arif calling repeatedly. I let it ring. Misha tried too. I blocked both. A week later, Razia told me someone had posted a photo of Misha at a wedding, alone. The comments weren't kind. I felt nothing, no vindictive thrill, no satisfaction, just clarity. Razia's house was small, but warm. She lived with her married daughter, who treated me with the kind of gentle respect Misha had never bothered with. I helped with meals, sat in the garden in the early mornings with a book, and once even joined a local stitching circle. We embroidered pillowcases and drank chai and talked about everything and nothing. No one called me old-fashioned. No one used my hands like tools. One afternoon, 3 weeks after the email, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting. It was from Arif. The envelope was heavy. Inside was a single-page letter. Ami, I deserve your silence. I don't ask for forgiveness. I've lied too long for that. I only want you to know that your words reached me. They hurt. But they were true. I hope, wherever you are finally living for yourself. There was a bank slip inside, a transfer in my name, a large one. I left it untouched. For the first time in decades, I no longer moved for anyone else's rhythm. I woke when I wanted. I cooked what I liked. Soft khichdi when my joints ached. Sweet semolina when the mornings were cool. Razia's daughter, Sana, would often knock before entering, calling out, "Auntie, chai banayen," as if I were a guest, not a burden. The first time I joined her at the market, she handed me the bag, instead of expecting me to carry it. "It's lighter than it looks," she said with a laugh. I nodded, but inside I thought, even when they say that, it never is. I was learning to live in a world where I didn't have to shrink to be loved. The news of the letter travelled quickly, as I knew it would. Families are ecosystems. You stir the water in one corner, and the ripples reach every shore. Some messages came with veiled concern. Why air such things publicly, Baji? Couldn't this have been handled quietly? Some with disguised satisfaction. I always knew Misha was too sharp for her own good. Allah exposed her. But most were quiet, silent. Because the truth, my truth, was heavy, and it didn't fit in the mouths of people used to swallowing shame for peace. I didn't regret a word of it. One day, sitting in the little garden, I saw a sparrow try to land on a branch too thin to hold her. She flapped awkwardly and darted away to a stronger perch. I watched her and thought, that was me. I had been resting on a life too fragile to carry me, a son who loved himself more than truth, a daughter-in-law who built security out of manipulation. And I had clung, not because I couldn't see the danger, but because I didn't believe I had another branch. Now I knew better. Arif didn't call again, but he sent one more letter a few weeks later, this one longer, handwritten. His tone was neither begging nor proud, just broken. Ami, I didn't plan to live like this. It began with one mistake, the second woman, the hidden trip, the baby. I thought I could contain it, keep both worlds running. But one lie became 2, then 10. Misha always knew. She agreed to stay. She said it was for the children. Maybe it was. But maybe she just wanted to win, to keep the image of perfection, even if it meant caging you too. I don't know what I expected when I first left. But I never thought you'd find out like this. And I never thought you'd be the one to walk away. You've always been strong, Ami. I just never saw it until you disappeared from my life. I folded the letter and placed it with the others. Not out of sentiment, but because sometimes the weight of words needs to be stored outside your chest. The next day, Sana found me kneeling at the flower bed. "Why are you pulling weeds? I was going to do it," she said. I sat back on my heels. Some things you need to pull out yourself, or they just grow back stronger. She knelt beside me, not to stop me, just to join me. And in that quiet moment, I realized I had not just escaped something. I had entered something else. A space where I could speak and be heard. One afternoon, Razia invited a few women from the local welfare group over. They wanted help running a small skills workshop, sewing, basic cooking, financial literacy for widows and older women left behind by sons, husbands, or the system. They trust older voices, Razia said, and you have strength in yours. I hesitated. I'm not a teacher. You're something better, she replied. You're someone who survived. So I said yes. The first session was quiet. Shy women with calloused hands and tired faces. Some barely spoke. But when I told them my story, carefully, respectfully, without naming names, they leaned in. When I said, "You don't have to remain where you are, simply because someone convinced you your place is at their feet." One woman wept silently and nodded. We stitched cloth. But what we were really sewing back together were pieces of ourselves. And I realized I didn't need revenge. That had never been the goal. What I needed was to exist on my own terms, not as someone's mother, someone's helper, someone's placeholder. Just me, Zahida Mazhar. Not Ammi, not Dadi, not background. Zahida. The money Arif transferred sat in the bank untouched for months. I let it gather dust, the way you let a blade lose its shine when you no longer need to fight. Eventually, I used a portion of it to help fund the sewing program. Not for redemption, for independence. The rest, I moved into an account under my name only, with Razzia as my nominee. The name on that account, Zahida's Second Life Fund, made the bank clerk chuckle. But it made me smile too. One evening, months after I'd moved, Misha emailed me. It was short. I told the boys you went away for health. They ask about you. If you want to see them, I won't stop it. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. You were better to me than I ever was to you. I didn't reply, but I wrote a letter for my grandsons and mailed it with 2 handmade handkerchiefs, blue, with their names stitched on each. In the letter, I wrote, I didn't leave you. I left the lie. When you're older, if you want to know more, find me. I will always open my door to you. Love, Daddy. 1 year after I walked out of that house, I stood at the threshold of a place I never imagined I'd reach, a home that was truly mine. Not a palace, just 2 modest rooms rented above a pharmacy in a quiet Multan neighborhood. The walls were old, but clean. The windows opened to a crooked neem tree that swayed gently in the summer breeze. And for the first time in my life, the silence inside didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like peace. I arranged the space carefully. A wooden shelf for my books, a kettle that whistled in the morning, a worn prayer mat by the window, the blue handkerchiefs I'd stitched for my grandsons folded neatly in a box. I still hadn't heard back from them. I might never. But they were my blood, and I would leave a trail if they ever chose to find me. I didn't have many possessions. But what I had now, freedom, clarity, dignity, filled every corner. One afternoon, I lit a stick of incense and sat cross-legged on the floor, sewing a small pouch for my neighbour's granddaughter. She liked to collect marbles. The doorbell rang. It was Razzia, grinning, with a basket of guavas. You're famous, she teased, stepping inside. Did you see? The Women's Committee put your story in their newsletter, called you a woman who burned down her cage with grace. I laughed, not out of modesty, but because it was true. I had never screamed, never fought, never demanded vengeance. I had simply walked away with all the evidence, all the secrets, and all the power they assumed I didn't have. That was enough. Sometimes I still dreamed of my old life. I saw myself in the kitchen, hands dusted with flour, waiting for someone to say thank you. No one ever did. But in those dreams, I now turned around and walked out of the house. I walked into light, into noise, into life. Sana's youngest child, Amina, had started calling me Nani. At first, I corrected her. Then I stopped. Why shouldn't I be someone's grandmother again? I read her stories, took her to the park, taught her to make dal with less salt. She was 6, loud, curious, and entirely unlike my own grandsons. She belonged to no blood of mine, but she listened. She hugged with both arms. One day, she asked, "Why don't you live with your son?" I answered gently, because sometimes even grown-up children make mistakes that break hearts, and when hearts break too many times, they go somewhere safe. She thought for a moment. Then she said, "Good. You should be where people are nice to you." And just like that, my truth was simple. By winter, the small sewing program I helped with had grown. We expanded into a neighboring room, bought 2 new machines, and started teaching basic budgeting and online selling. One of the women, Nasreen, used to cry every week. Her son had taken her pension and left her alone. She barely spoke at first. Now she brought biscuits for everyone and made the room laugh with her dry, biting humor. "You saved me," she once said to me quietly. I shook my head. No, we saved each other. That's what happens when invisible women stand up. We make each other visible again. Arif never called. And I didn't need him to. I knew he had lost something that no money or apology could buy back. Me. Misha moved on, too. Someone said she'd started working part-time, that she looked thinner, quieter. I didn't rejoice in that. I simply hoped she'd one day understand that power built on lies collapses when truth decides to speak. It always does, sometimes in a whisper, sometimes in fire. I turned 63 in March. Razia and Sana threw me a small party. Nothing fancy, just fresh flowers, soft music, and a homemade chocolate cake that said, "Happy Rebirth, Zahida." The candle flickered in front of me. One small flame. I closed my eyes and made no wish, because I had already received what I never dared to hope for, myself. Not the version shaped by duty, sacrifice, and silence. Not the one bent under guilt or stretched between other people's lives, but a woman who walked away and didn't look back. I sat on the balcony that evening, watching the neem leaves rustle in the dusk. The sky above me was wide, cracked with orange, smeared with hope. And I thought, this is what freedom feels like. Not loud at all, but complete.